Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy. We do projects, training, consulting. Check us out. And welcome to Office Hours Ask Us Anything on June 28, 2022. We do have a special guest joining us in just a moment. But before I bring her in, and yes, you can start asking your questions if you want, get them in the chat room, or you can send them in if you follow deltacx.com/links. You'll see a link on that page to how to ask your question anonymously. But of course, as always, I want to thank all of the low ego action heroes who are donating to the channel through YouTube. They are giving $3 to $10 per month and keeping me in streaming software and chocolate chips, which I definitely ate today. So thank you everybody for the delicious chocolate chips. I haven't updated that list in a week or so, so if you are a new subscriber, I will try to add you soon with my thanks. So let's bring in our guest so she can tell us who she is and help answer some questions. Ms. Julia DeBari from the extremely famous episode 129, where she's going to help us ask better questions in our job interviews. Hey, Julia, who are you?
Hey, Debbie. Thank you for having me on the show. Oh, God. Do I get existential? Do you want, like, the boring resume?
Oh
Like,
my gosh, you can be whatever you want. You can take out crystals and chant, just be you. Tell us who you are and why we're interested in your answers to these questions.
I guess as far as that goes, over 20, going on 22 years in the UX industry. Didn't do a boot camp, but big fan of people learning in any way they can, but always thinking critically. Don't think you're going to get all the answers from one place, and just want to be supportive and helpful to our lovely people joining the UX field.
Amen. I'm with you there. So, super. So, we're going to be taking your questions today. We did get 3 or 4 questions ahead of time, so we're going to start with those. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And I'm also checking email for the anonymous questions. I'll do my best to keep up. Some of you know I don't keep up with all these things as well as I should, but hey, one woman show. Though today, 2 woman show. All right, so I've got our first question queued up, and I'm going to always read them out loud because they might look a little small on your screen. How do you reduce or mitigate the risk of no-shows in your research studies? I work on small research projects. Every no-show stings. And I manage the recruitment myself. We have increased the incentive to $50 for a half-hour usability test session. Reminder emails go out a week, a day, and an hour before. In the last 2 studies, we had 0 no-shows. In this study, we've had several. It's frustrating. Julia, any advice on mitigating no-shows?
Well, you're in UX research or any kind of research with people, so you know this. You cannot control people. I know it's frustrating, and you're like, it worked great before, now it's not. This really sucks. What in the world is going on? It's not you. People are just people. As far as mitigating, you cannot control the situation. Is just getting, like, let's say you're testing 10 people, get an extra 3 or 4 as backups. Let them know they're backups. Um, I've been backups for other people for research projects. I've had backups for other people. It's always good to have some backup people. Um, 1 or 2 times I felt a little guilty that they were backups and I'd call them in anyway, even though I didn't need them, just because I was like, hey, I really appreciate you, being here and like mitigating these no shows, even though one time everybody showed up. And yeah, I would always just have a few extra people. And that's the best way to manage that. And don't always have the same people. You mix it up, like when you're doing your recruitment, like say, like, are you willing to be like a backup? And some people are like, I can only be a backup, or I have to come to the regular one. It's just a question you can ask in your screener survey.
Yeah, great answer. Totally agree. We found in my Delta CX world that on our projects, we have to schedule at least kind of 1.2x. Like if we want to meet 20 people, we've got to schedule 24 because we typically get
Exactly.
20% no shows. In some cases, if you know you're getting a larger number of no shows, then kind of, reverse engineer your own factor. Maybe your factor is 2x. Maybe you have to schedule 40 people to meet 20. But you're going to have something in your consent form or your policies that says, if we cancel you, you don't get paid, or if we cancel you, you only get $10 instead of 50, or whatever it is. So just make sure you're prepared with appropriate policies of how you treat the people that you cancel. Obviously, the people who don't show up don't get paid. Typically, the people who we cancel do get paid, but just to mitigate that, you might say, "Oh, if we don't need you, we'll give you $20 for putting the time aside instead of 50 or something like that." But yeah, you're going to have to start booking more. I think increasing the incentive should help. I also wonder what type of research this is, like what type of item or product or website. Sometimes people sign up for it and then they lose interest. So I guess take another look at the recruiting. Are you sure you've got the right target audience? I'm not saying you don't, just a second look to make sure you've got the right target. Julie, if you have anything to add, jump on in. Otherwise, I'm going to copy and paste the next question.
I think we're ready for the next one. I do apologize for the frustration. I think both Debbie and I have been there. We understand you're not alone in this frustration.
Very true. This is very common and not a lot we can do. People are fickle. All right, this is a longer story, so the font is tiny. So here we go. Debbie, I work at a consultancy and recently reviewed a scope of work created by my company. The project goal states that we need to meaningfully connect the client's various platforms and sites. There's no research planned, but there's an expectation to do 2 workshops. One is with stakeholders to capture opportunities and requirements for a future state digital customer experience, and another workshop with customers to do co creation. I've seen a trend of designers recommending co creation, which I have my reservations about, especially since we haven't spent time in the problem space. What are your thoughts? Drama. Julia, what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
this is common. I have been in similar situations myself. I find it hilarious. Maybe I've just never been lucky, but working in consultancies, that someone who's not doing the work makes the scope of work. Like someone who has no idea what's going on is writing the scope of work, and you're like, did you think to ask those of us who are actually gonna do the work? Like, really? Like, is it really so hard? Like, this
I
is
know.
kindergarten kind of stuff. Um, yeah, so yes, definitely been there. You have a couple options. I actually, one thing I like about the workshops is I haven't seen your scope of work, but no one said how long and how much those workshops can be. So I've actually done multi-day workshops. I was like, you didn't say, you didn't specify. So I actually did a co-creation workshop that was like 3 evenings in a row. One time it actually worked out great. But it can be hard. There's a lot of prep work you need for these workshops. And so, like, is that taken into account? That's the other fun thing about these scope of works. It's like, oh, just magical stuff will happen and it doesn't count for prep and cleanup and stuff like that. Um, Another thing you can do is go to the person who wrote the scope of work and be like, edit, 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 edit,
Or what's the
edit. You
client
forgot this.
expecting?
Yeah, like before anyone signs those papers, let's go through and check these things. And if someone's already signed them, you can do an addendum and say, like, some of these things were not caught in the first draft. And so we need to make some changes. There was a lot to this question. So no research planned. Sometimes what you can do is like the person who wrote it doesn't like get what research is, and like, so that's not why it's in there. I mean, there can be multiple reasons why the research isn't in there, but sometimes I've done, like, it may not be called research, but I will use that other line item as research and just be like, oh, just for my own edification, I'm going to use this line item as research. um, just depending how much conversation you want to have with the person who wrote this scope of work can be so much fun. um, yeah, especially, so one line is stakeholders to capture opportunities, requirements for future state. Yeah, that's going to take a lot of time. That's not like a one and done kind of thing. So, I mean, if they didn't specify hours or days, I'm like, okay, you're letting me play with the length of time. And so then I put in what I need to go there. So those are some things that I do. I think you said something about co-creation. Um, Yeah, I do find it interesting that you haven't done any work in the problem space. And they're like, "Yay, let's go do a co-creation session." That can be very awkward and a lot of work for not a lot of bang for your buck. Once again, you can just rename things like, "Oh, you person who wrote this, you called it co-creation session, but go ahead for you as the designer, make that session whatever you need it to be." They probably don't know the difference, to tell you the truth. And you can use that time to like educate those people as well. So don't be too stuck on the literal black and white words, and like sort of use things as you need them to be used. You could use that quote unquote co-creation session for traditional research.
You answered the question better than I was going to, so I'm so happy you're here today. So, number one, yes to everything Julia said. I think this is an opportunity for you to have a talk with some of the salespeople and the people who, the account representatives that tend to scope and propose and sell these things, and say, look, next time you really have to work with me or our team because this isn't the right thing to have sold the client. We run the risk that we don't do a good job merging their platforms because we didn't take the time to understand the platforms well enough, and then that's going to be bad for our company, bad for repeat business, bad for everything. We're selling them doing an amazing job that they couldn't have done themselves. So I think that agencies forget that they're supposedly selling an amazing job that the company can't do themselves, and agencies sometimes cut it down to a trendy workshop and a couple of wireframes, and they forget that they can sell a much larger project because the client trusts you. Now, you may have been bidding against other agencies, but to me, that's still not a good reason to underscope the project. I also agree with Julia, and wouldn't have thought of this, so I'm glad she's here, that you can kind of turn these into whatever you want. And I would definitely suggest that you start by reordering them. I think it would be really interesting if you brought the customers in first and maybe turned it into a half generative, half evaluative study, like learn more about recruit carefully, learn more about these people and their key tasks across all of these platforms, and maybe drop them into the platform, recording the screen, if you're with them or remotely, and show the carnage when they're trying to use these screens or get through their tasks, and then have a nice workshop with the stakeholders where you show some of these video clips. And you talk about the trouble that people are having in the system, the tasks they're trying to accomplish, how difficult that is, and how this project is going to probably end up more than, can we just make a navigation that brings these things together, which I'm just guessing. Maybe that's not what this is, but sometimes I see that. So I would say I'm with Julia. If you don't have if the SOW isn't extremely strict, especially about the order this has to happen or the amount of time, see if you can swap the order of these things, work with the customers, recruit carefully, work with the customers first, then show that to the stakeholders. Because otherwise, the way that this reads to me is meet with stakeholders, learn what UX they think this should be, learn what they want for bringing the platforms together, because that's essentially what that says, in my opinion. It says capture opportunities and requirements for a future state customer experience. So that means ask the stakeholders what they want. That, to me, that's fancy language for ask the stakeholders what they want. And so I wouldn't ask the stakeholders what they want without first showing them videos of user experiences and maybe some other artifacts, task analysis, something from research saying, look, this is what we learned about customers. Before we jump into what you think the future state is, let's keep in mind that this is what we've learned. This is what people are trying to do. So I think that can make this project a little bit better, but all in all, it sounds like the agency is just trying to be an order-taking pair of hands and asking the client, what do you want the future state to look like? Okay, we'll do it. So see what you can do about rearranging it. And then I would also say talk to whoever you have to talk to about being involved in these scopes and bids and proposals in the future. But thank you and good luck. And we had a quick comment for the person, someone added a comment for the question before. Cherry said, I use invitation tools to allow the user to schedule the time best for them, which is also a great way to mitigate the no-shows. I use Ethnio and Calendly. I used Calendly for a project and it actually created more no-shows than when I didn't use Calendly. So I don't know if it was just that project or if there was something wacky about Calendly. I did find there was some time zone confusion from people with Calendly. I generally found that some tools made it worse, but I'm not sure the calendar tool makes it better if people miss appointments. But again, when we did it with Calendly, it was worse. So sorry, Calendly. I want to like you, but I don't. All right. We have another question, but then we're caught up. So everybody who's here live, please do ask your questions. Julie and I are here until 1:30, so we've got 45 more minutes to take your questions, and we're happy to answer questions about anything. Oh, am I getting anonymous questions? I am. I'm getting some anonymous questions, so great. After this question, we will have one more. Hold on. Yes, we've got another question that's just come in. For some reason, I got it sent twice, but we'll only answer it once. Okay, I am pasting in the next question and blowing up the font. And here we go. Okay, this says, Hi, Debbie. I'm starting an internship as a UX designer this Friday in a medium-sized digital consultancy agency with years of activity. Besides being my first job in the UX field, it's also going to be my first office job. Well, first of all, congratulations to this person. And the question is, what advice would you give about being a good UX intern and working in an office? Ooh, remember offices, Julia?
Oh, that seems so long ago.
Seriously, remember the old days of pyramids and offices? Any advice for our fresh intern?
Well, congratulations. Excellent. Way to go. I'm going to start a little lighthearted, but then I'll get more serious. If you're working in office, no fish in the microwave.
Oh,
Just had to throw that out there. Like, don't
a
cook fish in the
classic.
microwave or anything smelly in the microwave. If you're in an office, just standard good stuff. Um, yeah. So I guess I'll start office and then I'll work into UX. So office stuff, I mean, it really depends on your personality. So I'm more introverted personally. And so like when I worked in an office, I mean, I worked in like offices with cubes. I worked in offices where it was just like a totally open space and there were just tables and you just sat at a chair at a table, which I hated. And I just felt like people's eyes were boring into the back of my head. I just really didn't like that. It depends on your personality. Definitely bring headphones. Even if you're not into listening to music, it can be helpful to block out because one thing that happens a lot in offices is there's people on the phone a lot and then you hear people talking. And so it can be good to have headphones just to block out outside noise. Um, I mean, I'm a very weird person, but like I would get anxious getting up from my desk and walking to the restroom and like who's watching me go to the bathroom? Are they counting how many times I'm going to the bathroom? I'm just a weird, overly anxious, nervous person. And so like that would stress me out. Um and then yeah, so being in an office has its own weird little things. And it also depends how the office is laid out. Like, are you in a big open room? Are you in cubicles? Do people actually have closed office spaces anymore? I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. Like that was back in like a long time ago. Um, also remember people can see everything on your screen. So, if you're checking your email or looking at Instagram, so is everybody else around you. So just things to keep in common or keep, I think it's helpful with phones now because you can like put them in your lap. But yeah, so that's some general office stuff. You hear noises that you were like, I did not know I was no longer single. Like, you know, um, yeah, so it can be interesting. So that's office stuff. It's very, to me, working in office seems very constructed and convoluted, and like, why do we work in this way? But that's the way we work. Um, yeah, as far as being a UX designer, so one thing is people, if they're not totally familiar with what you do, they're going to be expecting you sit in front of your screen, do not deviate from staring at your screen, and your mouse should be moving. Whereas a UX designer, I have, like right now, I have a pad of paper by me, I have pens, like I'm like drawing things, I'm getting up and like ripping up pieces of paper and moving them around. I don't stay in my chair all day as a UX designer. I go and, maybe I'm talking to other people what their thoughts are, like the developers or something like that, or the researchers. And sometimes people will be like, why aren't you sitting in your chair? Why did you leave your desk? Just keep in mind, UX designers, we don't just stay on a computer all the time. Make sure you have a nice, good pad of paper and some pens. Um, I like to have, like, my home office, I have a lovely whiteboard easel and I draw on my whiteboard. I have stickers, I have lots of different pens and stuff. You need a lot of stuff as a UX designer, and you might have to bring that with you if the company doesn't do it. Um, One thing you can also, that's more common these days, like when I was in an office, these were less common, but a standing desk, make sure, like you need to be ergonomically supported. So like standing desks are important, or making sure you go and get exercise, make sure you leave your desk and don't eat lunch at your desk, like go do something else. Um, yeah, so, and that's another thing, like for a while at one place, my desk was just a little bit bigger than my computer. And so that was frustrating as I didn't have a good space to put like my pen and paper and stuff like that. So I stole someone else's desk next to mine who wasn't using it. And I was like, these two desks are my desks. And, I had a lot of places where I wanted to pin up, sketches and things like that. So make sure you have a space that works for you with an office. Like these aren't things people will think to give you. You have to ask for them. Um, yeah, don't feel like you need to be tied to your computer. I would say that's the biggest thing. Like, I know we're all like amazing and we have the internet and computers are like so amazing. Our jobs were done long before there were computers and the internet. Um, uh, yeah. Debbie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Hard to add to that, but yeah, I'm gonna throw a couple of things in. I'm gonna throw in a refillable water bottle. I'm gonna throw in a hoodie in case they're over pumping the air conditioner, and um, and walk around the building and get to know where everything is. Think about it like the way you used to change classes in high school. Leave extra time to get to a meeting. You might have to take stairs or an elevator to get to other parts of the building or floors. Um, I would also like to add no fish in the meeting room. I'm actually deathly allergic to fish, and a product manager I hated once held a meeting with me in a tiny meeting room that held like 4 people, and he very slowly ate a fish sandwich, and I was getting a reaction, and he didn't care. So F him. So yeah, no fish anywhere if I could pick. Um, well, let's see what else. Oh, we're getting applause. Daniel says the water bottle thing is a must. Thank you. Stay hydrated, everybody. Don't just drink the free coffee all day. You'll end up with your brain exploding. But ultimately, I think some of the best advice, other than how to be in an office, is make sure you are asking everybody every possible question. You're there as an intern. Ask every question you have, ask why, and ask for help. Do not be reactive. Do not wait. Go, oh, I'm not sure, but I'll just wait 2 days for that meeting with that person. Go ask for help. You're the intern. We expect you to have questions. We expect you to get stuck. We expect you to wonder about stuff. We expect you to not be sure if you're going in the right direction. Don't be afraid to go ask somebody, hey, can you look at this? Or, hey, can I ask you a question? So I know for some personalities that seems very scary, but I would say do it anyway. Sorry, I'm going to have to turn off some of the on the messages. We're getting some porn spam. I guess I've truly made it on YouTube when we're getting porn spam. Yay. Yeah, Terrence says, congratulations, Anonymous, on the internship. We agree. I hope you're part of our Slack community and you'll tell us all about it. If not, you can join our Slack community from the link at deltacax.com/links. There is no charge. It is completely free. So yeah, good luck and tell us how being in an office is. I'd probably also say masks, but I'm extra careful nowadays. Okay, next question. We do have 2 more questions that have popped up. When you are conducting a UX evaluation for a company's website or app, what kinds of reports do you usually attach?
That's an interesting way of wording that question. So when I see the word UX evaluation, I think heuristic analysis, but you did not necessarily say that. So that makes me think. So those are some things. You could do a heuristic analysis. One of my, I don't know, fun thing to teach. Heuristic analysis and expert review are 2 separate things, and I feel like people mix these up a lot. An expert review uses the same, oh my God, Debbie, I just blinked. The same heuristics, but only one person is checking them, whereas a heuristic analysis has more than one person and multiple people going through heuristics and judging different parts of the website or app. So those are some of the most common ones when someone says a UX evaluation. I might do usability testing, either unmonitored or monitored. I mean, it depends how much time and money you're giving me. If you're like, oh, just go evaluate, I'm like, I will evaluate the crap out of this. And then you will like get multiple things. Yeah, if people don't specify, I just keep on going until they're a little overwhelmed, I guess. But definitely prioritize your feedback, whatever you do decide to do, and make sure that you're clear, like how you got the information and why you think this needs to be improved. Don't just be like, here's a bunch of stuff. Like, make sure it's easy for someone to understand and follow along with your thought process.
And it's actionable. And we also got an answer to the previous question. Someone on LinkedIn said, hey intern, if you're being ignored or not being assigned anything, root around and find something to do. Make the best of your time and learning opportunity. I agree. Go look for something to work on just in case. Don't be reactive, be proactive about everything. But back to this question. So typically when I'm doing an evaluation for a website or app, I am typically giving that report in PowerPoint. And the way that I do it is I screenshot some aspect of the website or app, and then I have some bullet points about what I think, as an expert opinion, what I think is going right here, what I think is risky or going wrong here, anything I see that seems to work against good heuristics, or break heuristics, or whatever is the right term for that, poop on heuristics. So anything I see, but I go beyond heuristics. Usually I'm looking also at, does the copy seem to be concise and meaningful and actionable to who they've said the target audience is? I've done some evaluations of sites where the copy was definitely not written for the target audience, and that's something to point out. I'm looking at the navigation. Does the navigation, do I believe the navigation is going to be easy and intuitive and make sense for who the target audience appears to be? I'm looking at accessibility. Did they miss the mark on some common accessibility things? And so for me, the evaluations I do are kind of a combination of heuristic, checking for certain heuristics, checking for Larry Marine's task detractors, checking for my 4 horsemen of bad UX, checking for pretty much anything, and then being able to put that into PowerPoint slides where I can say, hey, look what's going on this screen. Here's what I think is working for or against you. Here's some suggestions I have, but I never give an exact solution, partially because they probably didn't pay me for that, and partially because I might not be the person responsible for that, and somebody doesn't want their toes stepped on, but I say, hey, here's a suggestion. This, you're going to need to improve your navigation, or you're going to need to focus more on accessibility, or somebody's got to rewrite this copy, it's a mess, or hey, I can tell you redid half of your pages last year. I think you need to redo all of your pages so they actually look like each other. Lots of fun stuff. We've seen it all. Stories from the trenches. All right. The next thing was not really a question, but I'm going to put it up on the screen because I'm not too sure why somebody sent this in. So this is just going to be a moment of true strangeness. And let's put it up on the screen. But meanwhile, we're all caught up. So if you have a question, please ask it here live in the chat or send it in anonymously. And someone sent in anonymously, I am looking at helping companies within my locality evaluating their products for free. That's not a question. And my question is, why free? Isn't your time valuable? Isn't your knowledge valuable? Yes, you might think this is a way to get started and get your foot in the door to offer this for free. But remember, you're not guaranteed that they hire you after this. Sometimes companies go, wow, thanks for that report about all the things that are going wrong on our website. We'll go have our graphic designer fix that. You might make no money. You might not get a client. So if you do that, just remember, do it at your own risk. You are not guaranteed that they hire you for anything. And you also run the risk that they are insulted, that you're telling them their wonderful, wonderful website that their husband made is crappy or broken. Julia, something to add?
No, I 100% agree. I don't know why this is totally related, but I sort of missed this like thing of like doing things for free when I was younger. When I was younger, I was a professional equestrian, and I taught other people horseback riding. And so, like, my first job at 12 years old, I made $60 an hour. And then when I was like a teenager and was like working as a waitress and I was making minimum wage, I was like, wait, what's like, why are you paying me more? Like when I was 12, I made more money than I'm making as a waitress in college. Like, it's just like, don't give away stuff for free. Like, Debbie made an excellent point there. And there is something to be said, like value is equated with the amount of money. So if you're giving something away for free, then people are like, oh, that's not valuable. Like, I don't, like, why should I pay you? You need to set your own value as well. So
Yeah, when I used to do those early in my career, like the evaluations, I thought about charging nothing, but then I was like, okay, does that make me look weird or desperate? So I decided on like a really small amount of money, like $200. And yeah, based on the amount of hours I spent, it was probably a loss, but it was what we call a loss leader. You take the risk that maybe they go, oh, that's interesting. We should hire you for something. Otherwise, you got $200 for some hours, and you've made it look like it's worth something. Okay, so and Whitney has a follow-up question, and then we also have an anonymous question that just came in. So let me try to juggle these for a moment. Since Whitney's question looks like a follow-up question to the question before this, since this one isn't a question, let me put this one up. So Whitney says, do you find it's easier to speak in the common tongue when giving your expert reviews rather than UX profession terms, or do you make the connection between the terminology? I like that question. What about you, Julia?
Yeah, so I like to speak as common. I've never used that word, but as common as possible. You want as many people to understand what you're saying, and using UX terms can be useful, but if you use UX term, make sure you just explain exactly what it is immediately. Don't just use jargon for jargon's sake to make yourself sound smart. Like, I try and make things as simple and easy to understand that like a 5-year-old can get it. um, that's what I would suggest. Yeah, using UX professional terms, I can understand the need to put them in there, but just make sure you explain them immediately and make them very easy for people. As many people should understand your evaluation as possible.
Yeah, totally agree. I do tend to write mine in very common terms, and if I am going to use a term, I make sure to explain it in that same sentence. I would never say, see here on this screenshot, you have poor information architecture. Love, Debbie, goodbye. It wouldn't make sense to do that because that's not going to be, say it with me, meaningful, actionable, and helpful. So I would say, oop, I'm trying to take that off of your face and it's not going. Hold on, I have to press this
Okay,
button.
it's my look.
I'm so sorry. Not optimized. So yeah, I tend to use common language. Mine can sometimes sound pretty casual, since I think a lot of people who get to know me know that I speak very casually and commonly, and I'm not going to try to make it sound like you need a degree to understand what I'm saying. So, yes, I agree with Julia. Common language, unless you want to introduce a term to them, and then you need to explain it immediately so that they get it. I see another anonymous question coming in, but before that, we'll answer the other anonymous question, and it looks like this. Debbie, you mentioned having reservations about co-creation sessions. Is that because they're similar to design sprints? Some may say that since co-creation includes users, it's superior to design sprints, which often don't. Julia, thoughts on co-creation sessions, design sprints, and those types of things?
Yeah, I usually don't put design sprints and co-creation sessions together. Those are two totally separate things to me. Um, that's my personal opinion. I think co-creation sessions have their place. I don't use them often, but they do have their place depending on what you're doing. And I think that's the most important thing. Whatever methodology you use for whatever, whether it's research or design, make sure you're clearly articulating why you're choosing that method. Not just like, oh, someone mentioned this method, so I'm going to go do it. Or I want to learn a method. Like, I see this a lot. I want to learn a method, so I'm going to do it. If it doesn't add value to your project, then that's not the appropriate time to do that method. It's interesting. Design sprints, I feel like, have become a muddled term since the book Sprint by Jake Knapp. And there's design spikes. There's all sorts of different related things. Um, to me, design sprints are not something that you do on a regular basis because it's just unrealistic. And I know some companies do this, and I'm like, you're totally crazy, and it's not sustainable at all. Design sprints are useful when you need to catch up on a design, and dev can go do something else and not like code for release, but they can, clean up code or handle some other tech debt. You should not be doing design sprints every sprint. Design sprints are when you're on a very focused problem and you do them like once a quarter or something like that. And co-creation sessions are a research methodology, which you should be doing in a very circular method. So yeah, I don't think those two are related. And I want one superior to another. You just need to be, why am I doing this? Is it going to solve the problem? Debbie, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I will add that some stuff. I think the peeps who are frequent flyers here know that I super hate design sprints, and so I've got a different perspective here. My concern about co-creation sessions is that, to me, they're not totally research because we're expected to design with people, and they're not totally design because we're expected to design with people. And I think we have to decide, what is the co-creation session? What is the success criteria? How do we know that at the end of the co-creation session, we did the right thing or we did a good job? And you always hear some of the most admired people, at least in my opinion, say things like, users don't know what they want. Users can't architect their own solution. And so I'm always concerned about, sorry about that. That's actually emoji from porn spam. I will do my best to continue blocking it, but I'm amazed that I seriously, let's stop for a moment. I am amazed that YouTube cannot block the porn spam. I mean, it has sexually explicit words in it. Julia can't see it. I took it off the screen. But those of you who are in the YouTube chat can absolutely see it. I have to stop and report it. And it's amazing because, like, you would think that with their algorithms, they can figure out that this is porn spam. I don't get it. Unbelievable. Okay, back to the actual question. So sorry. So my concern is about the co-creation session. What if you get in a co-creation session and people imagine, oh yeah, what if it did this? And what if I could have this? And what if it could do this? And I'm very concerned that users are sometimes poor architects of their own experience. We've learned a lot from Larry Marine in our task analysis videos in the micro lessons playlist, that it's really important for us to understand users' tasks from an objective perspective. So ultimately, I'm not a fan of the co-creation style because I'm concerned that users are going to pick things they've already seen, things they imagine are feasible, crappy ideas. I think people in general are poor architects of their own solutions. So, but again, if you can follow some of Julia's ideas here and see if they work for you. I happen to not be a fan, but there's nothing wrong with trying an approach that I'm not a fan of and seeing if it works for you, or seeing if you can adjust it into something that still feels like good user-centered design with creating good outcomes. So, you don't have to blindly, robotically follow me. Let me see. Terrence, I see your question, and I'm going to add it to the bottom of the list because we have gotten a few in anonymously. So let me get those on the list, and then we'll answer Terrence. Okay, we've got one before Terrence. This one just came in anonymously, and it's a little bit on the long side. It says, here we go. I had a 6-month UX internship, air quotes, in summer of 2020. I'm a junior and I didn't know any better. It was graphic design plus UI plus prototyping. No UX work at all. There was no product launch or any measurable outcomes of the 6 months of work. I struggle articulating my learnings or outcomes of that experience in interviews, and I never get past the phone screen. Any tips around how I could look at my experience and talk about my learnings? Sadly, so common. Julia, what do you want to add there?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing you just said, Debbie. Unfortunately, this isn't uncommon. I am very sorry for you, and offer support and sympathy. I think one thing I would add to that. So when you're in the phone screens and you're in the interviews, this is just a general thing for everybody, but they can help. Is you want to think of your answers in the why am I blinking? Oh my god, totally blinking. The STAR method. STAR method. Situation, task, action, result. There are other acronyms that generally mean the same thing. And like even for myself, what I do is I have a Google Doc with 8 answers in the STAR method that I write out just so like I need to write things. I don't so I can like remember things. And when you're in an interview, and it's funny, I just learned this fairly recently as a recruiter. Um, it's sort of like you're doing politics. Honestly, I hate politics, and like with all the stuff going on right now, I'm just politics in me. It just makes me want to cry. And like even when I was a kid, I never ran for like school president or anything because I was like, oh my god, I can't handle any kind of politics. But you need to think of interviews a little bit like politics, and that the person on the other end is going to ask you a question. You don't necessarily need to answer the exact question they asked you. You
Ooh,
need
I like
to
where this is
answer
going.
what's going to put you in the best light to move forward in the interview process. So this is horrible, so I hate politics, but I've started watching these like publicized debates. And honestly, I'm not a Donald Trump fan, but he is really, really, really good at someone asks him a question and he says something totally
He answers a
unrelated.
completely different question. Right.
That's sort of what you need to do in an interview. I mean, not quite as bad as that, but like that's the idea you need to go with. And like, so for example, you had an internship, a UX internship, and like to you, it's air quotes. The interviewer doesn't know it's air quotes. Um, so tell me about that experience. And you can write something. So I started at this company. My job was to do X, Y, and Z. And then you can change it right there. Be like, your job was, let's say, do graphic design and like, let's see, you said graphic design, UI, and prototyping. You know, my job was to do graphic design and blah, blah, blah. Instead, the action is I did these other UX things. And you didn't have to have done them. They don't need to know you didn't do them in that exact internship. You've done the work. Excuse me. Um, so you answer the question in a way that'll get you on to the next interview. So you have about 5 or 6 of these answers. And long as the person asks a general question, and remember the questions, especially in the phone screen, are like, what is your design process? Have you done wireframes before? Like recruiters asking phone screen questions are like pretty generic. Like I bet I could find online what are the questions that recruiters should ask during a phone screen for a UX person. Um, long as you can like hook something onto what they said, you don't have to answer the exact question. Answer what's going to get you to the next interview. I feel like I
But it
sort of
has
went
to be
off on a huge.
honest. Yeah. Yeah. I
But
think
definitely
it's
be honest.
right.
Don't lie.
Right.
Be
I'm with
honest.
Julia and I'm okay with you doing that type of thing and I'll go into a little detail of what I'm thinking because I'm thinking something similar, but make sure it's honest. Don't pretend you did UX work you didn't do. Just make sure it's honest. But probably the distraction technique that I would use there. Koyel says, Sri says, taking notes intensifies. Koyel says, that's a darn good tip, especially for neurodiverse folks. And Solomon, I see your question, and I'm going to add it to the end of the list. So hold on. And I'm thinking Solomon's question might be the last. I think we're going to be out of time after that. But what I would add to Julia's answer is I would take especially since this is the phone screen, I would take an opportunity to just, again, if it's honest, say the words this person wants to hear. While this UX internship this internship was a great opportunity to work in a corporate environment and learn more about agile software development and to be able to collaborate with my teammates and help develop the prototypes that became our software. Okay, so you're not focusing on the bad aspects of this, that you felt like more of a graphic designer and a bit of a pair of hands, which brings me back to my article where I disagree with Jared Spool, who says that UX newbies should be given production design jobs. This is why they shouldn't. So I know I have a whole article on it. Yeah, Whitney says we're just reframing. And Terrence says, this is great
Yes.
info.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, we're not lying, but we're just answering a different question, which is collaboration and working on prototypes that helped the UX designers test their ideas. Or I'm making stuff up, but make sure it's true. And just focus on that. And I think that will end up having enough buzzwords to make it to the next part of the interview. But remember, the hiring manager is going to be a little bit more savvy. So typically when I get to the hiring manager, my technique changes a little bit, and they might say like, hey, you just had a 6-month UX internship. Tell me about the UX work you did. And I would say, well, normally my UX process is, if I'm a designer, I want to make sure I'm working from really great research, and then I'm looking at the information architecture, the interaction design, prototyping, testing, and iteration. That's really the process that I prefer. Unfortunately, this company wasn't really set up that way. I was able to do some of the prototyping, but they really didn't have that focus on user-centered design that I was hoping for. So I'm really excited about this job because I'm hoping that this will allow me to do more of the type of of UX work that I would like to do. And so that's also a bit of a reframing, because you're being honest that you might not have the type of stories that this person wants, but that you know the right way to do things, and you're hoping they'll give you that chance. If they're going to base hiring you on what your internship work looked like, you're going to have trouble, because when you do your portfolio walkthrough, it's going to be visual design and cleaning up somebody else's Figma file. So you have to find a way to tell your story about what you can do and what you want to do and how you know the right way to do things. Unfortunately, this internship wasn't totally interested in pursuing that, but you're hoping that in your next role you'll be able to do that type of work, supported by seniors and leads who all want to do world-class UX work. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. All right, let's look at the next question. Let's see. This one's from Terrence, live in YouTube. Let's put this one up on the screen. And Koyel's got a question. You can ask it. We'll try to fit it in. Hey, Debbie and Julia, what are some approaches that someone could take to gain more hands-on UX experience and better prepare for internship and apprenticeship opportunities?
That's a really interesting question. So, hands-on UX experience. Like when I see those words, a few things flit through my mind. Um, Whether it's specific, like tactical methodologies. Hands-on to me also means collaborating with other people. So, like, are you not able to do that? Um, it's funny, I've actually been trying to do a lot of research on like open source and like how more people can get involved from a UX standpoint with open source, because there's tons of like developer things. And um, I was actually like trying to make like a whole list of like, go to this open source and like they need help with their design. And it's turning into be a bigger project than I thought. Um, as far as like some things you can do, this may not seem like very obvious hands-on work that I think is important, just because I look at a lot of portfolios and I don't see this, is like you can start, for example, Curiosity Tank, Michelle Ronson has a lexicon, like UX lexicon, and there's like just tons of methodologies. Write each methodology and then practice doing that methodology. I think the amount of places I see, like, I did this thing, and then when I'm a recruiter and ask why, no one can answer that question. Be able to do different methodologies and say why you chose to do that methodology and like what were the outcomes, and would you do the same one again or not. I think that can help to do some hands-on work. Um, and what's helpful with that is you can reuse like the same projects. If you already have projects like from school or like an internship, you can reuse them and just like, oh, I'm going to do the research a different way, or I'm going to do this design a different way, just to practice doing different methodologies and like understanding different outcomes and how things happen. I think that's what's really important. As hiring managers, we want you to have like previous experience and stuff, but I'd rather why you're doing what you're doing and be able to articulate it than whether you've actually done the work. Like, I have confidence that most people can do the actual work. Um, just in the interest of time, I'll stop going on. Debbie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
A little bit. And can you stay late? We have 3 more questions after this.
Yeah, I can stay. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, great one. Yeah, so I think that if you're preparing for an internship or apprenticeship, it's important to know foundational stuff because if you're going into an internship or an apprenticeship, they expect you to be a newbie and they expect to give you, hopefully, some training, some coaching, and make sure you're asking about that if you're interviewing. You know, like our previous person, is this going to be an internship where I'm just doing grunt work and I'm not getting support and help and work reviews? Make sure you're going into the right environment. But I would say that it's best to work on learning different techniques, trying them out so you can apply what you're learning and get some coaching or mentoring. Get someone to look over your work because I find a lot of people will learn about a technique, they'll do a passion project or fake project, or they'll mock something up, and they really didn't understand the principle or approach or technique. Well, now that could work against you because now when I look at your portfolio and I go, oh, holy cats, like, no, this is, oh no, this person learned this wrong. Now if they come work here, I have to undo bad habits. So I think that one of the most important things people can do as they try to learn and level up is get that mentor or coach who can look at the work that you are playing with, practicing, doing, so that you can get some good feedback as you're going and not fall into bad habits early. That's my tip. Okay, next question. Hello, Debbie. I'm considering embarking on a master's degree in HCI or interaction design. Do you think this is going to be helpful in the long run? I'm more into UX research than UI visual designing, by the way.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What do you want to get out of getting a master's degree? Is it that you want to have a degree and be able to say, like, I have this degree and so I should be paid more? Is it certain methodologies that you feel like will only be taught at university? I'd really think through that a lot. You know, degrees, honestly, I feel like our education system in the United States is like way more expensive than it needs to be. So I mean, that's something to think about too, is like, so you get a master's degree, how many loans are you going to pay out of pocket, or are you able to get scholarships, and like how much is that going to affect your day-to-day life as far as price and time? I guess I think clearly. I mean, I'm actually in a master's degree right now, honestly, to tell you the truth. And sometimes I question, why did I do that? What was I thinking? um, we all have our various reasons. If you're in more in UX research than like more the design side, I do think research can be helpful, but keep in mind you don't have to get like there's a lot of different master's degrees. I mean, there's that you could get that are tangentially related, and everything from like anthropology to statistics to HCI to interaction design. If you want to lean more towards research, I wouldn't say interaction design is like necessarily the best master's degree. Um, I would really, really just think clearly, like, how much money do you want to spend? How much time? Like, are you going to go part time and keep working? Are you going to go a full time student? There's a lot of things. Like, before I decided to do my degree, I had this whole pros and cons list and I wrote down everything. And, like, yes, I was willing to give up this and do that. And I think it would just be really clear because there'll be times in your degree when you're just like, why did I decide to do that? And be able to go back and look at your list and be like, I made the decision. I'm confident in my decision making abilities that this was the right decision for me. And then really think about, like, why do you want this degree? Like, what is it going to give you that you can't get now? Is there another way to get that information? Is there another way to get to your goal? Or is master's degree the only way to get there?
Yeah, and I think the main thing
Um,
that I would add to that, and thanks for that, is that while advanced degrees can look good on resumes and CVs, as at least one person in our live audience tonight can tell you, they don't automatically land you a job. that many employers are still looking for a portfolio of work. And if your master's program, for whatever wacky reason that I'm just going to make up, if that program shows poor work or weak work, or you only did projects with 6 people and I can't even tell what you can do, then you run the risk that you spent all that time and money getting a master's and it's still hard for you to find a job. We have some people in the Low Ego Action Heroes Slack community who got a master's and still took a year or more to find their first job. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that getting that advanced degree, or even bachelor's, master's, PhD, respectable, admirable, but is not a one-way ticket to a fast UX job, the way that sometimes an advanced degree can be a faster one-way ticket to other jobs. Right now, UX is not necessarily favoring people with degrees, and in some cases, even with a master's or PhD, you are still a UX junior. You do not skip the line and come in at senior. You are still a UX junior, making junior money and having to work your way up with everybody else. So I'm not against master's degrees, but just make sure you're clear that there are still a long road ahead of you. Live in the chat, Koyel is saying, yep, in fact, as per my research, sometimes women with PhDs are told to dilute it down. So there could be some gender bias as well. And even Dr. Nick has talked about some bias he sees, that he thinks that some people are biased against PhDs. Like, oh, you're just going to be some weird brainy academic and you can't really do the corporate work. So there's that. All right, we are already running late. Thanks so much to Julia for answering questions. We've got a few more, and then we will play ourselves out of here. This one says, let me put it up on the screen. Is time on task always a relevant metric to track in usability testing to determine the ease or difficulty of a task? Ooh, I have an answer, but Julia first.
Yeah, no, time on task is not always a relevant metric. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It really depends what you're testing. And then, for me, ease of use or difficulty is probably the most important one to test when you're doing usability testing. Sort of like we've been mentioning throughout the show, is really being clear on like what you're looking for and how you're going to test and do that. Time on task only works in some situations.
And what I would add to that is, if I'm usability testing, the number one thing I want to know is this the right solution for the right audience and the right execution of that design? I am less concerned about how many seconds did someone spend doing something or not doing something, because this is something they've never seen before, and there might be a learning curve. I'm more concerned about, did this seem intuitive? Did this seem logical? Did it seem to match their perceptions or mental models or priorities? Was it easy for them to do? I'm not going to get too wound up on 7 seconds versus 6 seconds. So while I think time on task can be sometimes good to measure, and maybe it's better to measure that out in the wild when we're past some people's learning curves, when it comes to usability testing, I have to say I am just really focused on usability. I'm really focused on, is this is the information architecture good? Is the interaction design good? Is this easy to use? Are people getting, again, the usual 4 horsemen: frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction? Is there something making this a poor experience? So I'm usually not measuring time on task or any time in a usability test when, number one, people know they're in testing conditions, and number two, they've probably never seen it before. So that would be my answer there. Okay, this was something Koyel posted to the chat room, and I've tried to piece it together, but it's a little bit weird. Let me try to read it out, and we'll try to make sense of it. In interviews, we're asked to talk about some collaborative work where we are supposed to shine. Somebody told me that even if you haven't had anything collaborative, you can talk about how you could have done it collaboratively. Given a choice between talking about a collaborative school coursework project and how you could have done a solo project differently in collaboration, what's more feasible?
Yeah, I'm just thinking through this question a little bit. I would talk more about a collaborative school project versus a solo project if they're asking about collaboration. Um, I hope I'm answering
I'm
the
feeling what
right
you're feeling. If
question.
they're asking about collaboration, answer with collaboration. And remember that, in my opinion, and Julie, you can tell me what you think. Very often, when job interviews ask about collaboration, it's not how did you and five of your co-students chip away at a UX project together, because remember, many at jobs many UX people are the only UX person on the project. I think they typically are curious about collaboration with product managers, engineers, stakeholders. So it's not so much like me and five other UX students worked on this thing, which is very common at the boot camps, but I think they would hypothetically want to know about collaboration with non UX people. And I'm hearing more and more privately from people that they are failing, or at least failing like they failed interviews when they were asked about collaboration and they didn't say anything about product managers, engineers, and stakeholders. That's how I read this question. So you can talk about collaboration, but is it the type of collaboration they're hoping to hear about?
Yeah, and I would just add to that. Totally agree. And like, maybe you don't like that we were saying a lot of bootcamp projects. It's like you and other designers are collaborating, and you're not actually working with PMs and engineers and stuff. What I want to hear as a hiring manager is like, how did you communicate when there was a problem? Like ideally, yes, I'd like to, you communicate with stakeholders and PMs and engineers. But like, if you don't have that, the things I want to hear you're talking about, that you're collaborating about is like, how did you communicate there was a problem? How did someone make a suggestion? How did you handle it if you didn't agree with it? It's your communication style and your way of working with people who have different ideas and thoughts. That's what I'm looking for most importantly.
Cool. Thank you for that super angle on that. So, thank you again for running late. We have one more thing that came in anonymously, and it does win for a little bit strange. So, I think it's a perfect ending moment for you and me, because I think it's a question that answers itself. How can I be more articulate when doing UX work?
Oh, interesting question. So, articulate, um, I would definitely don't talk too quickly. Make sure to breathe between your sentences and some of your words. Slow down when you're talking. And then articulate, I don't know if you mean like using UX jargon or just explaining something in general. One thing I've done over the years to help me with that is I write things down on paper and then read them out loud and then practice. It takes practice. You don't just magically, well, some people might, but I certainly don't magically become a super articulate person. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's something you have to practice like any other skill. And if you want to practice jargon, there's lots of places to do that. If you want to explain the jargon, there's lots of places to do that. So it's practice, and I would definitely recommend a lot of deep breath work and talking to people who have no idea what UX is and explaining things to them in a way that they understand.
And the only
Um,
thing that I would add to that, because I think that's a fair answer given a bit of a strange question, and I think it would be if you have some self awareness that there's something about your conversation or delivery or presentations that isn't articulate, I would say use that self awareness to try to figure out what that is and maybe see if you can find a mentor or coach who can help you with some of those speaking or presentation skills, because it's hard for me to tell you how to be more articulate when I don't really know what's going wrong. Like Julia said, we don't know if this is a lingo thing. We don't know if this is an fluent English fluency thing. We don't know if this is you're trying to use fancy words and maybe you don't need to. Like we kind of don't know what's going wrong here, so it's really hard for us to specifically comment. But and at the same time, like the question kind of undoes itself because the question was missing detail that would have helped us answer it better. So I think for a self-awareness moment, maybe a question is, do you sometimes forget to include details that would help other people understand what you're talking about or what you're asking about? Because we're not too sure what's going on for you, but we wish we could help. So, running 10 minutes late, thank you again for being part of the show. Ms. Julia, tell everybody where they can find you or follow you, connect with you, whatever it might be.
I'm pretty boring, honestly. LinkedIn is my jam. I was honestly, and I still am, I worked at LinkedIn for a little while, and I'm on LinkedIn like 20 million times a day, and I don't understand how people at LinkedIn are not on LinkedIn as much as I was. It was actually frustrating that like they were not on LinkedIn as much as I was, even though they worked there. Yeah, LinkedIn's a good
Eat
way
your
to
own dog
get a hold
food,
of me.
LinkedIn.
So I don't know. I'm a weirdo. What can I say? I like LinkedIn.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
everybody look up Julia DeBari on LinkedIn, JuliaDebari. I'm sure we will have Julia back again for some other future adventure together. So, special thanks for her. Let me just take a quick look at what our the schedule is for the rest of the week. I don't think we have a lot of shows this week. Yeah, so quickly, Friday we have the critical thinking stream. But I have decided to switch it up a bit. Normally, we are doing critical thinking about articles and social posts that you send in, and it's a little bit of light and fluffy and ranty. But given what happened in America, I've decided that we're going to try some critical thinking around that. It is a difficult topic, it is a sensitive topic. But if we're going to practice critical thinking, I think we should use that as practicing critical thinking. And to help guide us, we're going to have one of our favorite guests, Dr. Seth Finkel, a fully qualified psychologist, helping to guide us in that sensitive discussion. So if you are not comfortable hearing about or discussing what just happened in America related to abortion laws and women's rights and things like that, please don't join us on Friday. But if you are comfortable hearing that or curious about how we would apply critical thinking to that, please do join us on Friday, July 1st for practicing critical thinking. So, everybody is saying thank you. We're getting thank yous. I don't have the chat on the screen because I'm worried we're going to get more porn spam that I can't delete fast enough. But everybody says thank you so much and invaluable, and see you again. So I'm going to play us out of here. Julia, thank you so much. And bye, everybody. See you maybe Friday.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are